Welcome to Sleepless Grim, where we wander, we wonder, and we drift into autumn dreams. My name is Elara, and I'll be your guide tonight. Thank you for joining me. Tonight, we journey into a forest, alive with golden light, where fallen leaves carpet the earth and ancient secrets linger beneath the branches. In these quiet glades and hidden groves, those who came before us have left whispers, guiding any traveler brave enough to follow the path and uncover the magic hidden among the turning leaves. Now, settle in and let's begin. The first true breath of autumn rolled quietly across the valley just after dawn, soft, amber, and cool enough to mist the edges of Elara Thorn's cottage windows. She sensed it before she opened her eyes, a subtle shift in the air, as if the season had stepped into the world with deliberate gentleness. Her little cottage, tucked between the red gold maples and the winding brook, creaked softly in greeting. Autumn was here, properly here, and it always carried stories with it. Elara slipped out of bed, wrapped herself in her woolen shawl, and padded across the wooden floorboards that were warm from last night's fire. She pushed open the front door, expecting the crisp morning and the rustle of leaves. Instead, she found a lantern. It rested directly on her doorstep, precisely centered, as though placed with intention. Not dropped, not forgotten, delivered. The lantern was bronze, aged but not tarnished, with etched vines curling around its frame. Thin glass panes, just slightly fogged, enclosed a small flame that flickered without heat. Elara frowned, leaning forward. The flame wasn't burning wick or oil. It sat suspended, like a tiny sun trapped inside the lantern's belly. And the strangest part? She felt it. A warmth, not physical but familiar, like a memory brushing the back of her mind. Elara knelt, touching the lantern gently with her fingertips. It pulsed, an actual, soft pulse, like a heartbeat answering her touch. She gasped and pulled her hand back. The flame brightened. The maple grove behind her rustled with a sudden sweep of color, a ripple of red, orange, and yellow, though there was no wind. The leaves shimmered as though stirred by the lantern itself. Elara swallowed. "Who brought you here?" No one answered, of course. The forest didn't speak in words, but the air shifted again, and beneath the distant canopy, she noticed something unusual. A pinch of golden glow, then another. A trail, faint, blinking gently between the trunks. She had lived beside the maple grove for 2 quiet years, ever since leaving the bustling town of Briar Hollow. The woods had always felt alive, but never intrusive, never calling to her. But this morning they felt expectant. She looked down again. The lantern's bronze handle was warm now, as if inviting her to lift it. She hesitated, chewing her lip. This wasn't normal. this wasn't safe. She knew too well what happened when magic knocked politely on someone's door, because it never stayed polite for long. Yet something within the lantern tugged at her. Not a compulsion, not a spell, just a quiet plea, a whisper of purpose. Elara stood, brushing off her skirt, and reached down decisively. Her fingers closed around the handle. The flame surged. A soft ring echoed, clear, crystalline, like the chime of faraway glass bells. It swept through the trees, the brook, even the ground beneath her boots, and for a moment, everything around her glowed faintly gold. Elara inhaled sharply. Then the sound faded. The glow settled, and the lantern hummed in her hand with the warmth of something that had finally been found. Behind her, inside the cottage, a cup perched precariously on the shelf, rattled and fell, but did not break. The sound jolted her back into caution. She stepped inside, clutching the lantern carefully, and set it on her kitchen table. It lit the room in a soft, honey glow, warmer than any candle. Her cat, a fluffy marmalade creature named Thistle, darted across the floor, stopped abruptly, and hissed. Thistle was old and wise, in a feline sort of way, and she had never hissed at a lantern before. "That's not helping," Elara muttered. She sat in front of the lantern, leaning close but not too close. The flame flickered twice, almost impatiently. "What do you want?" she whispered. A single spark leapt inside the glass. The flame danced upward, pressing against the top pane, and Elara swore it shaped itself, briefly, into a curling symbol she recognized from the old herb-caster books. A rune for guidance. Not warning, not danger. Guidance. Then the flame settled again. Elara stared, her heart thumping. "I haven't studied runes in years," she murmured. "How do you expect me to?" A soft knock. 3 slow taps. Elara froze. No one ever visited this early. Thistle puffed up, fur spiked like a bristling brush. Elara crossed to the door cautiously, heart racing. She opened it a crack. A breeze pushed fallen leaves across her boots, but no one stood outside. Instead, something lay on the ground again. A small envelope made of pressed maple leaf fibers, sealed with wax in the shape of the same rune she'd seen in the flame. Elara picked it up, her breath catching. The envelope was addressed simply, "For the lantern bearer." Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a folded parchment, thick and textured. The ink smelled faintly of cedar. She unfolded it and read the single sentence written in sharp, elegant script. "Follow the autumn lights. The grove remembers you." Her stomach tightened. That made no sense. She had never been here before 2 years ago. Unless the grove wasn't remembering her exactly, but something older she was connected to. Something forgotten. Elara backed into her cottage, shutting the door. The lantern's flame flickered wildly, brightening as though urging her onward. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." She needed tea, a moment, a plan, anything but the buzzing insistence of magical objects appearing on her doorstep before breakfast. But the second she stepped into the kitchen, Thistle began pawing frantically at the window. Elara rushed over and saw it. The groves were glowing again, a long, shimmering trail of golden lights dancing between the maple trunks, beckoning her. The parchment slipped slightly in her hand. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why me?" A gust of cool autumn wind cracked through the trees, carrying a faint sound, almost like distant music, soft and echoing, woven with nostalgia she couldn't quite place. The lantern chimed again. Elara exhaled shakily. She knew this moment was not one she could ignore, not without consequences, not without regret. She grabbed her shawl, her boots, and at last, the warm bronze lantern that pulsed like a living heart in her palms. Thistle meowed in protest, but Elara shook her head. "I'll be back before the kettle cools," she promised, though she didn't believe it. With a final glance at her cozy cottage, she stepped outside. The door shut softly behind her. And as Elara Thorn crossed the boundary from her quiet life into the glowing maple grove, the lantern lit the path before her with a gentle, golden certainty, as though it had been waiting years for this single step. The maple grove accepted Elara with an almost ceremonial hush. As soon as she crossed beneath the first arching bough, the golden trail brightened, dozens of little floating lights drifting upward like tiny lantern sparks. They moved slowly at first, gently guiding her along the moss-softened path. The air smelled of cinnamon bark and cool river mist. Leaves floated down in slow spirals, as though caught in a dream where gravity moved politely. Thistle's faint meows echoed from inside the cottage, fading as Elara walked deeper among the trees. She glanced back once, seeing the warm silhouette of her cottage nestled between the red-gold leaves. It looked so small now, so safe. Too safe for whatever was unfolding around her. The lantern in her hand pulsed warmly, matching her heartbeat. With each pulse, the golden trail ahead shimmered brighter, revealing places she had walked before, but never truly noticed. A twisted oak with silver-veined bark, a cluster of mushrooms glowing faintly lilac, a fallen log shaped like a sleeping fawn. She had always thought of the grove as peaceful, but now she sensed layers beneath that peace, a quiet intelligence, an awareness that watched her with gentle curiosity. She stepped over a root, brushing aside a curtain of crimson leaves. The golden lights danced ahead, weaving around the trunks like playful children. She followed cautiously, her boots crunching softly over fallen foliage. "How do you know me?" she whispered, unsure if she was speaking to the lights, the lantern, or the grove itself. A soft breeze brushed her cheek, warm despite the cool air, like a comforting hand. The lantern hummed in response, its flame curling into another brief rune. "Seek," before settling again. Elara shook her head. "Seek what?" she muttered. Guidance. Seeking. If you start spelling full sentences, I'm turning back. The flame flickered rapidly, almost like laughter. Despite the strangeness, a small smile tugged at her lips. Magic, real magic, had always felt cold or dangerous in the stories she'd heard growing up. But this felt almost gentle. Almost. The deeper she walked, the thicker the trees grew, their branches interlocking overhead to form golden tunnels of autumn light. Every so often, the golden trail paused at a fork in the path, waiting patiently until she stepped toward the correct direction. It felt like being guided by an old friend who knew the way home, except this wasn't home, and she didn't know where it was leading. After what felt like 20 minutes, the trees opened into a small clearing she had never seen before. At its center stood an old stone well, covered in moss and draped with dried vines of crimson ivy. A few remaining flowers, tiny and white, clung stubbornly to the lower stones despite the season. The golden lights gathered above the well in a tight cluster, hovering as though waiting for her to approach. Elara held the lantern up cautiously. The flame inside grew brighter, casting warm light across the stones, revealing etchings she couldn't see from afar. Runes, old, worn, and familiar in a way she could not explain. She stepped closer, heart pounding, but something made her stop. The air around the well felt different, not dangerous, but heavy, resonant, as though layered with echoes of something long past. "What is this place?" she whispered. The lantern warmed in her palm, urging her closer. Elara approached slowly, studying the ancient runes carved into the brim. Gathered light, forgotten names, the season remembers. A shiver traced her spine. Before she could touch the stone, the golden light suddenly split into gentle spirals, drifting downward and slipping into the well like drops of glowing water. The stone shimmered faintly. The air stirred. Then, a soft voice whispered upward from the darkness. But it wasn't a voice spoken aloud. It bloomed inside her mind like a distant memory. "Lantern bearer." Elara's breath caught. She staggered back, clutching the lantern tightly. "No," she whispered. "Absolutely not. You don't get to talk inside my head." The presence, warm, ancient, and tired, answered with the faintest ripple of light rising from the well. "At last, you've returned." "I haven't been here before," she insisted. "I would remember talking wells." The presence pulsed once, an emotion she felt more than heard. "Not you, but your light." Elara froze. "My light? What does that even mean?" The lantern's flame surged in a brilliant flare. She gasped, holding it away from her chest. The flame twisted and stretched, taking shape again, this time forming a more complex symbol she remembered only faintly from childhood stories. The rune of retrieval, of remembering something lost. Her fingers trembled around the lantern's handle. "What do you think I lost?" The presence in the well flickered, gentle, distant, like a candle breathing its final glow. A promise. Elara blinked. A promise? From me? A pause, then left behind for the one who would inherit the lantern. The heartbeat inside her chest faltered. Not her. Not her promise. Someone else's. Someone she might be tied to. She swallowed hard. What promise? Tell me. The presence in the well dimmed, its voice barely a whisper. The promise of return before the season ends. Elara's pulse quickened. Return from where? Silence. Then the golden lights rose again from the well, spiraling into the air like soft fireflies. They hovered before her, forming a slowly rotating ring of light. Inside the ring, the air shimmered, revealing a faint image, blurry, unstable, like a memory refusing to come into focus. A figure, a silhouette, someone holding the very same lantern. Elara leaned forward, breath trembling. Who are you? The image flickered, cracking like old film. A voice, strained, distant, echoed faintly. Find me before the colors fade. Then the vision shattered like glass. The golden lights dispersed into the trees, dimming until they vanished completely. The clearing fell quiet. Too quiet. Elara lowered the lantern slowly, feeling its weight more heavily now. The flame had dimmed, glowing small and exhausted like a tired heartbeat. What was that? She whispered. Who was that? No answer came, only the rustle of falling leaves. Elara stepped back, gripping the lantern closer to her chest. She felt suddenly cold, despite the autumn warmth. The grove no longer felt like a friendly guide. It felt like a keeper of something old, something waiting, something impatient. She realized then that this wasn't a simple invitation. It was a summons, and whatever promise had been left for her to fulfill was already unfolding. She tightened her shawl around her shoulders, glancing once more at the well. Then, with a deep breath, she turned toward the path. The lantern's tired glow quivered, then steadied, casting a narrow trail of warm light before her. As she stepped back into the trees, the grove seemed to lean closer, listening. The lantern pulsed once, and the path ahead lit again with the faintest spark of gold, guiding her deeper still. Part 3. The Whispering Pathway. The forest felt different now, quieter, denser, as though every branch was leaning a little closer to Elara, waiting for her next step. The lantern flickered in her hand, its once eager glow now softer, like a candle burning after a long night. It guided her still, but with a weariness she could feel through the bronze handle. Elara inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. The encounter at the well lingered in her mind like a half-remembered dream. The voice inside her head, the shimmering silhouette, the cryptic message about inheriting a promise she'd never made. A promise to return before the season ended. And that figure, glowing, fragile, speaking as though their voice would collapse at any moment. She shivered. The forest canopy shifted subtly, letting streams of orange light spill down like molten gold. A gentle breeze brushed past her cheek, carrying the scent of wet leaves and something faintly sweet. Elderflowers, perhaps, though they rarely bloomed this late in the year. "Where am I even going?" she murmured. In answer, a single golden light blinked to life on the path ahead, then another, and another, each one drifting just a few steps ahead, always vanishing the moment she approached, only for a new one to appear further in the distance, like stepping stones made of autumn fire. Elara followed. The trunks around her grew older, their bark thick with spiraling ridges and knots that looked almost like faces. Sleeping, solemn faces. Columns of amber light filtered through them like silent hymns. The deeper she went, the more the forest seemed to hum beneath her feet, the ground vibrating faintly, as though something ancient stirred far below the roots. Her breath hitched as she noticed carvings on some of the broader trunks. Runes, similar to those on the well, but these were sharper, newer, carved with deliberate lines. Their meanings fluttered at the edges of her memory, something about protection, passage, and binding. She traced a fingertip along one rune, the grooves cool beneath her skin. The lantern pulsed gently. "Do not linger." Elara withdrew her hand as though the tree itself had spoken. I'm going," she muttered, though her voice shook. She wasn't alone in these woods. She couldn't shake that certainty now. The golden light trail suddenly veered left, leading her toward a narrower path twisted between two towering ash trees. Elara squeezed through, her shawl snagging on rough bark. As she freed herself, something small skittered through the leaves nearby. A squirrel, perhaps, or a fox. But she didn't see it. She only heard soft pattering feet and a faint whisper of movement. Just normal forest noises, she reassured herself. She didn't believe it. The path sloped downward, the air growing cooler. Mist curled between the roots, pale and shimmering in the lantern's glow. When Elara stepped into it, the mist swirled gently around her ankles like curious fingers. And then she heard the first whisper. Not a voice in her mind. This was external, airy, like breath weaving through branches. The lantern returned. Elara froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "What was that?" she whispered, spinning around. The forest answered with another rustle. Soft laughter, like leaves brushing against one another, almost melodic. Elara gripped the lantern tightly, lifting it higher. The flame steadied, brightening just enough to reveal faint shapes moving beyond the trees. Not figures, just pale outlines, glimpses of motion that dissolved the moment she looked directly at them. Long years, waiting. Her pulse quickened. "Who's there?" The whisper drifted through the mist again, neither threatening nor comforting, just present. A promise kept, a promise broken. Elara took a shaky step back. I didn't break any promise. I don't even know what you're talking about. The whisper grew softer, fading like smoke. Not you, but the one before. The one before. The previous lantern bearer. The weight of those words settled heavy on her shoulders. Whoever had come before her, whoever had carried this lantern last, they had failed to return. And now something, someone, waited for closure. Elara swallowed hard. I don't know who they were, she admitted aloud, her voice trembling. But I'll try to help, if that's what this is. The lantern warmed gently, as though approving her words. The mist parted ahead, revealing a new space, a small glade surrounded by ancient oaks whose branches arched overhead like a cathedral ceiling. The golden lights gathered there, forming a loose circle above a bed of fallen leaves. Elara stepped into the glade, breath catching at the sudden change in atmosphere. The air smelled faintly of old parchment and wood smoke. Her footsteps seemed louder here, each crunch echoing unnaturally. At the center of the glade lay an old wooden box, its lid half open, hinges rusted but intact. Moss crept up its sides, and autumn leaves filled its corners. Something inside glinted softly. Elara approached slowly. Kneeling beside the box, she lifted the lid fully. Inside lay a faded piece of cloth, once green, now dulled to olive. Wrapped within it was an object she recognized immediately. A pendant. Not just any pendant, one shaped like a hollow circle with a small, intricately carved maple leaf at its center. A symbol she had seen carved into the oldest tree in the grove on her very first day living here. She lifted the pendant gently. It was cold, unnervingly cold, despite the warmth of the lantern shining directly upon it. As she turned it over in her palm, she saw words etched faintly on the back. Return before the colors fade. Her breath caught. The same message she'd heard at the well. Who did you belong to? She whispered. The glade answered, not with whispers this time, but with a sudden, sharp gust of wind that whipped her shawl around her shoulders and sent leaves spiraling into the air. The lantern's flame surged wildly, bursting into a fierce, blinding gold. Elara shielded her eyes. When the light dimmed, she saw it. A figure standing across the glade, shrouded in long, autumn-colored robes, face hidden beneath a hood, hands glowing faintly with amber light. Elara's breath froze mid-inhale. The figure raised one hand slowly, a gentle, almost sorrowful gesture. "Elara Thorn," the figure whispered, its voice soft, layered, familiar in a way that made her chest tighten. She backed up a step. How do you know my name?" The hooded figure tilted its head slightly. "Because," it said, voice like drifting leaves, "your arrival was foretold." The pendant in her hand pulsed cold. The lantern in her other hand pulsed warm. Two opposing heartbeats. Elara swallowed hard. Foretold by who? The figure hesitated, then spoke the words that chilled her more than the forest air. "By the one who carried the lantern before you." Elara stared. You knew them?" The figure nodded once, slow, waited. "Yes." Beat. "And I know why they never returned." Elara moved cautiously through the forest, her lantern casting a warm circle of light in the dimming dusk. The golden trail that had guided her from the well had faded, leaving only scattered sparks hovering faintly among the branches, as if urging her onward, but now testing her resolve. Every step she took crunched softly against the thick layer of fallen leaves, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the otherwise still forest. She could feel the weight of the pendant in her hand, cool and smooth, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat she could almost hear. The pendant seemed to hum with an energy that tugged her attention to the path ahead, deeper into the grove she had never dared to enter. The air had shifted. Where once it had been sweet with cinnamon and moss, now there was a sharpness, a metallic tang mingled with the scent of damp earth. The mist curled along the ground in ghostly tendrils, brushing against her ankles as she moved. Shadows stretched longer, twisting into shapes that reminded her of faces, silent observers carved into the very air. Each tree seemed alive with a muted awareness, their branches arching like sentinels watching, waiting. Elara shivered, adjusting the shawl over her shoulders, though the chill was more than the season's bite. It was a sensation that spoke of memory, of the lingering presence of those who had walked here long before her. The pendant pulsed once more, and she noticed a small stone path veering to her left, partially obscured by a tangle of vines. Something about the stones called to her. They were uneven and worn, clearly old, but as she stepped onto the path, the golden light of her lantern seemed to embrace them, illuminating tiny carvings etched into their surfaces. Symbols she did not recognize, but somehow understood at a level deeper than conscious thought. They were guides, she realized, marking the route for someone who had been chosen long ago. Her footsteps slowed as she traced the patterns with her eyes, following the way they led further into the heart of the grove. A sudden gust of wind rustled the canopy above, and the leaves swirled in a slow, dizzying dance. Among the rustling, she thought she heard whispers, soft, indecipherable murmurs that seemed to rise from the soil itself. Elara paused, holding her breath, listening. The whispers became clearer, forming words that curled around her mind like smoke. Remember, awaken, the one before. Her pulse quickened, the one before. Whoever had held the lantern prior to her, whoever had left this promise behind, had ventured down this very path, and perhaps had never returned. A deep sense of reverence washed over her. The forest was no longer merely a place of quiet beauty. It was a repository of memory and duty, demanding acknowledgement from anyone who dared to trespass. The golden sparks, once scattered and playful, now formed a steady line ahead, moving slowly as though testing her courage. With each step, she felt the weight of responsibility settle more firmly upon her shoulders. The lantern in her hand warmed in quiet encouragement, the flame steady despite the encroaching shadows. She followed the glowing path until it ended at a small, moss-covered bridge that spanned a narrow stream. The water beneath it shimmered in the lantern's light, though the reflection seemed to ripple with life of its own. On the far side, the forest thickened into a tangle of brambles and ancient oaks, the shadows among them so dark they seemed almost tangible. Elara paused, gazing at the threshold before her. She knew instinctively that beyond this bridge lay the place the previous lantern-bearer had never reached, an ancient hollow whispered about in the old tales, where the forest's deepest secrets slept beneath layers of roots and stone. Steeling herself, she stepped onto the bridge. The planks creaked beneath her weight, sending ripples across the water, and for a moment, the golden light flickered in panic before settling again. She exhaled, focusing on the trail ahead, and noticed that the leaves on the other side glowed faintly with an inner light, a signal that she had been expected, or perhaps that she had been chosen. The pendant pulsed against her palm, a steady, insistent heartbeat that seemed to match her own. As she moved past the bridge, the air thickened with the scent of autumn decay and wildflowers. The trees leaned inward, forming an archway that felt both protective and constricting. Within this tunnel of branches, the whispers grew louder, layering over each other until they formed a single voice, a voice that was neither male nor female, young nor old, but timeless and patient. "You have come," it said. "The lantern's light endures, but the bearer must complete the path. Are you ready to see what was hidden?" Elara's heart pounded. She felt both fear and a strange exhilaration. I will try," she whispered. "I will do what is needed." A sudden shimmer danced across the ground, and the golden lights surged upward, forming a spiral that lifted her gaze toward a hollow in the trunk of a massive oak. The hollow was larger than any tree cavity should be, its interior glowing faintly with an amber light. The pendant pulsed more urgently, as though urging her to approach. She stepped closer, her feet crunching over a carpet of leaves and moss, and peered inside. Within the hollow lay a chest, small and wooden, but ancient, adorned with carvings that mirrored the runes on the stones and trees she had passed.
It seemed alive in the lantern's glow, humming faintly, as if it contained a pulse of its own. Elara's fingers trembled as she reached out to touch it. The moment her palm brushed the wood, the chest opened on its own, revealing a small bundle wrapped in silk, faintly shimmering like the first frost of autumn. Inside the bundle lay a journal, its pages yellowed with age, but intact, and a second pendant, smaller than hers, carved with the same maple leaf motif. The journal's cover was embossed with a single word: return. She opened it carefully. The writing was flowing, elegant, almost ethereal, chronicling the journey of the previous lantern bearer, their trials, the whispers they had heard, the paths they had walked, and the promise they had left unfinished. As she read, a warmth spread through her chest. The journey she was on was not hers alone. It was a continuation, a thread woven through generations. The previous bearer had faltered, but their light had endured, preserved in the pendant and journal for her to find. She realized that her role was not merely to walk the path, but to complete it, to honor the lantern's promise, and to awaken what had been hidden beneath the grove's ancient heart. The forest around her seemed to sigh, leaves rustling in a gentle applause. The golden lights twirled in delight, guiding her back to the path, now illuminated more brightly than before. The pendant in her hand and the journal pressed to her chest both pulsed in harmony with her heartbeat. She felt a connection to every tree, every stone, every whisper that had come before her, an understanding that the forest's magic was not just guidance, but memory, trust, and endurance. Elara stepped forward, leaving the hollow behind, but carrying its weight within her. She felt the forest part for her, revealing a winding path that led toward a clearing she had glimpsed only in the faintest golden memory, a place where all the lantern's past and present bearers had converged, where the promise would finally be fulfilled. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, she did not feel fear. The whispering path beneath the falling leaves had led her here, and she understood, deep in her bones, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The forest seemed to lean closer, approving, as the golden lights danced around her in celebration. Autumn's last warmth kissed her cheeks, the breeze carrying scents of smoke, honey, and cedar. And in that sacred, quiet space, Elara knew the promise would be kept, and the lantern's light would endure beyond her lifetime into the turning of seasons yet to come. The forest felt alive in a way it never had before, as though every leaf, every branch, every whispering root knew that the journey was nearing its conclusion. Elara stepped carefully along the winding path, the journal pressed to her chest, the pendant warm against her palm. The golden lights floated above her head like tiny stars fallen to earth, guiding her forward with a steady, unwavering glow.
The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of damp earth, falling leaves, and a faint trace of something sweeter. Late blooming flowers hidden in the shadows, their perfume a reminder that life endures even as seasons change. She paused for a moment, taking in the silence that had settled around her. It was the quiet of expectation, heavy yet comforting, a silence that demanded both reverence and courage. Every sound, the rustle of leaves underfoot, the soft hum of the distant stream, was magnified, intimate, familiar. She could almost hear the footsteps of those who had come before her, their hopes and fears etched into the very soil beneath her feet. Ahead, the trees opened into a wide glade, bathed in the amber glow of the setting sun. The golden lights gathered here in a swirling, spiraling dance, converging above an ancient stone pedestal, partially covered in moss and creeping ivy. The pedestal had been carved with intricate runes, much older than any she had seen along the forest path. It radiated a quiet power, a pulse that harmonized with the thrum of the pendant in her hand. Elara approached, her breath shallow, feeling the weight of generations pressing gently upon her shoulders. She knelt before the pedestal and placed the pendant atop it. The moment it touched the stone, the forest exhaled. The golden light surged upward, forming a pillar of warmth and radiance that stretched to the treetops, illuminating every corner of the glade. The whispers of the forest became a chorus, rising and falling like wind over a golden field, echoing words of hope, endurance, and the promise fulfilled. The lantern's bearer has come. The path is complete. The light endures. From the edge of the glade, a figure emerged. Not human, yet not entirely of this world. It shimmered like sunlight through amber leaves, its form fluid and comforting. The figure's voice reached her heart before it reached her ears. Elara Thorn, you have completed what was begun long ago. The lantern's light is yours to safeguard. and through you, the forest remembers. Elara's fingers trembled as she held the pendant, now glowing with a golden flame that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. I don't know if I'm worthy, she whispered. I've only followed the path, step by step. The figure's voice was soft but resolute. Worthiness is not chosen, it is earned. You have listened, you have understood, and you have persisted where others could not. That is enough. A gentle breeze brushed past, carrying with it the scent of cedar, honey, and the faint whisper of rain yet to come. The golden light swirled faster, filling the glade with a soft warmth that reached even the furthest edges of the surrounding trees. Elara rose to her feet. Around her, the forest shimmered with quiet magic. Each leaf and branch illuminated as if kissed by an eternal autumn sun. She lifted the pendant higher, feeling a surge of clarity. She now understood what the previous bearer had not. The lantern's purpose was not simply to illuminate the path, but to honor the journey itself. Every whispered secret, every hidden stone and rune, every trial along the way had led her here, not as a destination, but as a beginning. The figure drifted closer, its presence enveloping her in warmth. The forest's whispers are yours to carry now. Let them guide those who will come after. And remember that the light never fades for those who continue to walk the path with courage and care. Elara nodded, feeling a quiet power settle deep within her chest. The golden lights responded, coalescing into a radiant circle that hovered around her, protective and serene. The whispers became softer, gentler now, like a lullaby sung by the wind itself. She could feel the memories of every lantern bearer, every secret guardian of the forest, intertwined with her own, forming a chain of light that stretched through time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson, gold, and amber, Elara took a slow, steadying breath. She walked to the center of the glade and held the pendant close to her heart. The forest seemed to lean closer, every branch and leaf acknowledging her presence, every rustle a gentle cheer. The golden light spun upward, weaving through the branches and spilling into the night sky, transforming the ordinary grove into a sanctuary of warmth, memory, and enduring magic. In that quiet, sacred moment, Elara understood fully. The lantern was never hers alone. It belonged to the forest, to the path, to every soul who had walked before her and would walk after. Its light would endure because she had listened, because she had honored the whispers, because she had carried forward the promise of the autumn grove. The forest slowly exhaled, the golden lights dimming to a soft glow that lingered like the last ember of a fading fire. Elara sat on the mossy ground, the journal open beside her, and watched as the first stars of night appeared, twinkling through the canopy. The air smelled of wet leaves, of distant rain, and of something eternal, hope. The path had ended, but its story would continue, carried in whispers, in leaves, in golden light, and in the heart of every lantern bearer to come. As the moon rose over the glade, casting silver light on the sleeping forest, Elara felt a peace she had never known. She closed her eyes, letting the soft whispers and gentle golden glow lull her into a deep, dreamless rest. The autumn night wrapped around her like a shawl, warm and protective. And in that quiet, sacred embrace, the forest, the lantern, and its keeper rested together, awaiting the turning of the seasons yet to come. The journey had ended, but the promise endured.